Long before the first rosy light touched the peaks of Glacier Pass, Dr. Mia Sinclair rose from her sleeping bag and sat on the tailgate of her battered 4x4, drawing steady breaths of pine-scented air. Steam curled from her insulated mug as she listened to the whisper of wind through spruce boughs and the distant call of a loon echoing across frozen lake. At that moment, the world felt still and sacred. Her radio crackled to life with a rough voice reporting a wounded grizzly sow caught in a leg-hold trap on the North Fork of Bear Creek, her 2 cubs crying nearby. Without hesitation, Mia snapped the radio shut, tossed back the last of her coffee, and unloaded her pack of its warm layers. She strapped on her snowshoes, checked the tranquilizer rifle's charge and dosage calculations in her mind, and secured the medical kit at her side. Crunching through knee-deep snow, she followed the narrow service trail that wound along the creek's edge, every step guided by memory of old avalanche scars and hidden cairns. Dawn's pale glow began to crest over distant fir ridges just as she rounded a bend to find Ranger Thompson standing guard atop a fallen log. Below, the sow lay sprawled in the snow, blood matted in her thick fur, one massive paw clamped in steel jaws. Her 2 cinnamon-furred cubs trembled on the opposite bank, yipping in alarm. Mia crept forward on silent snowshoes until she could see the bear's trembling flank through the thicket. She set the dart rifle against her shoulder, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger. The dart flew true, thudding into muscle, and the sow roared once before staggering into the branches. Mia knelt to retrieve her dart gun, heart pounding, as the cubs backed away and Ranger Thompson eased them toward a waiting crate. Within minutes the sedative took hold. The great bear collapsed into a wakeful sleep on the cold ground, her breathing slow and even. Mia moved in to free the trap's cruel jaws, hands steady as she cut and pried the metal. The snow around them lay pure and undisturbed once more, and in that hush it was clear she had crossed the fragile boundary between human and wild, answering the call of the wilderness with courage and care. The morning light filtered weakly through the pines by the North Fork of Bear Creek, yet the air remained sharp and cold. Mia crept forward on snow-packed ground, each careful step muffled beneath her insulated boots. Ranger Thompson, perched half in shadow on a fallen spruce, lowered his rifle as Mia signaled. Below, the grizzly sow, her flank matted with dark blood, tensed and growled through clenched jaws. The trap's steel springs bit deep into her paw, and every thrash sent shivers of agony shaking through her massive frame. Mia fitted her headlamp and dialed the tranquilizer rifle's sight. She had calculated the dosage precisely for a 300-kilogram bear, just enough to sedate without risking overdose. Exhaling slowly, she gripped the stock and squeezed the trigger. The dart spun through the crisp air, embedding in the sow's shoulder with a muffled thump. For a heartbeat, the bear roared, a guttural, threatening sound that echoed off the creek's icebound banks, then staggered back into a thicket of willows, growling in confusion. Thompson held the cubs at bay with gentle whistles, his eyes never leaving the sow. One cub, cinnamon-furred and no larger than a medium dog, peered from between 2 boulders, its pupils wide with fear. Mia watched the sow's legs buckle as the sedative took effect. The bear swayed, rigid muscles finally slackening, until she collapsed into a heap of tawny fur and drifting snow. Mia knelt beside the sow, keeping her gaze averted to avoid triggering any last surge of panic. She spoke in low, soothing tones, voice steady despite her pounding heart. "It's okay, girl. I'm here to help." With a gloved hand, she felt for the trap's jaw just above the crushed paw. Blood slicked her fingers. Gritting her teeth against the chill and the bear's matted fur, she deployed heavy-duty cutters. The steel jaws groaned as they yielded, and with a final snap, the trap fell apart. Exposed flesh glistened where fur once grew. Mia swabbed antiseptic over the wound, her fingers moving swiftly but gently, aware that time was of the essence. Ranger Thompson handed her a syringe loaded with a long-acting antibiotic, which she injected into the bear's hindquarter. Then came the analgesic, enough to dull the pain for the journey ahead but not so strong as to extend recovery. As she worked, the cubs edged closer, drawn by their mother's groans. Mia raised a hand to calm them. One cub's small nose brushed her glove in tentative gratitude before retreating to Thompson's side. With the trap removed and medication administered, Mia unrolled a thermal blanket and wrapped it around the sow's injured paw, securing it with elastic bandaging. She checked the sow's vitals, heart rate slow but steady, breathing even, and nodded. "She'll be all right," she told Thompson, though the bruised darkened wound and the cold winter ground still posed risks. Next came the GPS collar, a lightweight unit custom-built for large carnivores. Mia slid it over the bear's thick neck, tightening the straps just enough to stay in place without causing constriction. The collar's small antenna blinked to life, signaling a successful link to the refuge's satellite network. Mia exhaled in relief. Now they could monitor the sow's movements long after today's rescue. The sedative's warmth ebbed, and the sow's breathing deepened. Mia retreated a few paces and watched her drift between sleep and wakefulness. As the cubs called softly, she gathered the two youngsters into rescue crates lined with moss and blankets. Their small bodies were trembling, fur damp with snowmelt, but their eyes held no malice, only worry for the fallen mother. With cubs secured and so stabilized, Mia signaled Thompson. Together, they loaded the crates and the sow's makeshift stretcher onto the ATV's cargo bed. Mia paused to look back at the great bear waking in the dappled morning light, her massive head lifting as she sniffed the air. In that moment, Mia felt the fragile bridge of trust extend between human and wild. The sow, once victim of cruel steel, now a partner in her own rescue, guided gently back toward freedom and healing. For the next 3 weeks, Dr. Mia Sinclair transformed the makeshift holding pen into a crossroads between two worlds, human and ursine, where patience would pave the path to trust. Each dawn found Mia kneeling at the pen's edge before sunrise, muffled calls of jays and the distant rush of Bear Creek her only accompaniments. Wrapped in her quilted parka, she carried a simple routine: a supply of fresh salmon fillets, an array of medical instruments, and most critically, her unwavering calm. Day 1 to 3, Learning Boundaries. Echo, the grizzly sow, awoke groggy but alert, the sedative's warmth fading from her heavy limbs. Mia kept her distance, never approaching head-on, and spoke in low, rhythmic tones that mimicked the forest's steady heartbeat. She placed salmon pieces along the pen's perimeter, stepping back immediately after each offering. Pawn and Rook, the cubs, peered from behind their mother, noses quivering. Though Echo sniffed tentatively at the first fish, she snarled at Mia's outstretched hand. Undeterred, Mia repeated the ritual each morning, each fish bridging a fraction of the fear between them. Day 4 to 7, Tentative Connections. By the fourth day, the sow lingered over the fish, glancing up as Mia retreated behind a protective barrier. Mia introduced softer foods, berries and small apples sliced into cubes, laid in shallow dishes. Echo's approach was hesitant but curious. She sampled a piece, then another, each bite reducing the gap between fear and acceptance. Mia rewarded these small steps with gentle whistles and the soft scratch of her notebook pen on paper, a sound Echo came to associate with kindness. With each passing morning, Echo's growls gave way to deep, rumbling exhalations as she settled next to Mia's barrier, a silent invitation to come closer. Day 8 to 14, Trust in Touch. Once Echo accepted food from Mia's gloved hand, the next challenge was wound care. Mia cleaned the sow's leg hold injury twice daily, administering mild antiseptics. Echo flinched only once when the bandages were removed. Afterward, she stood calmly as Mia palpated the paw, her breath even and unthreatening. During these sessions, Pawn and Rook drifted forward to watch, their amber eyes bright with curiosity. Mia began leaving pens of food near Echo's flank, then extending a finger to stroke the sow's coarse shoulder fur. To the world's surprise, Echo leaned into the touch, a mother's gesture of acceptance for another caretaker. Day 15 to 21, Shared Space and Signals. With routine established, Mia introduced simple trust-building signals: a short whistle to indicate come, a raised hand to signify wait, and a soft click to mean good. Echo responded by approaching when called and stepping back at the raised hand, behaviors Mia rewarded with treats. The cubs, especially Pawn, began mimicking Echo, skirting forward when Mia whistled and pausing with a paw raised at her gesture. At times, Echo would sit back on her haunches and nudge Mia's gloved palm with her nose, a powerful symbol of cross-species trust. By the end of the third week, Mia could walk alongside the enclosure's interior without eliciting fear or aggression. Echo and her cubs moved freely around her, sometimes pausing to groom each other near Mia as though sharing a moment of peace. Hidden cameras recorded these scenes, images of a wildlife veterinarian and a grizzly sow coexisting in harmony, teaching each other the language of respect. In teaching Echo and her cubs to trust humans, Mia retrained herself to read the silent cues of bear body language: the shift of a rump, the flick of an ear, the gentle sway of a massive head. In return, Echo learned that beneath the ranger's rifles and steel traps, there could exist a gentle hand, one that could heal and set free. Thus, the fragile bridge between two worlds, once battered by fear, now stood firm on foundations of empathy, routine, and the shared will to survive and to live side by side. At dawn's first glow, Glacier Pass lay bathed in pale gold, the rising sun glinting off wind-whipped drifts and casting long, cool shadows across Bear Creek's icebound banks. Mia arrived at the release site, a sheltered meadow ringed by spruce and birch, where Ranger Thompson had cleared a gentle slope for the release crates. The air was crisp enough to smell pine, and the faint brine of distant tidal waters carried on a high ridge breeze. 2 heavy-duty wildlife crates rested on padded sleds, one for Echo, the sow, and one divided compartmentally for Pawn and Rook, her cubs. Mia and Thompson approached quietly, voices hushed. Mia carried a final ration of fresh venison, cutting it into small cubes that she scattered around the crate's entrances. "This way," she murmured, slipping a lead line on Echo's GPS collar to guide her later if needed. With a nod from Thompson, Mia released the latches on Echo's crate. The sow's massive head emerged first, eyes blinking against bright light, muscles rippling as she flexed her injured leg. Echo paused, breathing steam into the frosty air, then sniffed the venison cubes, tail flicking once in cautious acknowledgement. Mia knelt to one side, avoiding direct eye contact, and lowered her hand in a calming gesture. Echo's posture relaxed, ears rotating forward, then she stepped fully into the snow, each powerful paw imprinting fresh tracks on the pristine slope. Pawn and Rook, still uncertain, peeked over the crate's edge. Echo nudged Pawn gently with her snout, urging him forward. The cub flinched, then hopped down into the drifts. Rook followed, a tentative chatter escaping as he shook off lingering nerves. Mia watched them circle their mother, tumbling in the snow before settling at her flank, whiskers brushing her fur in affectionate greeting. Once the family regrouped, Echo led the way down a well-worn game trail, a sinuous path through knee-high willows that led toward Bear Creek's west bank. Mia and Thompson trailed at a respectful distance, careful not to spook them. The cubs bounded ahead, pouncing on frozen lumps of snow and startling a ptarmigan into flight, their giggling squeals echoing against distant cliffs. Halfway to the creek, Echo paused on a raised outcrop and glanced back at Mia, amber eyes meeting hers in a silent farewell. Mia lifted her hand in a slow wave, Echo dipped her head in acknowledgement before pivoting to follow the creek's curve. Pawn and Rook flanked her, padded paw prints overlapping hers in a perfect family line. At the creek, thin ice fractured under Echo's weight as she stopped at a breathing hole. Leaning down, she sniffed the water's edge, then lapped gently before trotting onward into berry-strewn alder thickets. Mia watched until their silhouettes vanished into the forest's interior, then exhaled slowly, chest lifting with the knowledge that her careful bridge between human care and wilderness freedom had held strong. In the hush that followed, the meadow lay empty once more. Only the whisper of the breeze through conifers and the steady murmur of the creek remained, echoes of a grisly family reclaimed by the wild and forever linked to the compassionate hands that set them free. 6 months had passed since Echo and her cubs were released into Bear Creek's valley, and Glacier Pass had begun to resonate with their presence in unexpected ways. At dawn on a crisp autumn morning, Dr. Mia Sinclair hiked along a narrow wildlife corridor newly cleared between spruce stands and berry thickets, tracking Echo's GPS signal. The path wound through golden alder groves painted in fiery reds and oranges, and the underbrush crackled with the secret stirrings of squirrels and grouse. Mia's breath came in even gusts as she emerged onto a gently sloping knoll overlooking the orchards of a remote mountain village. Below her, Echo stood sentinel at the orchard's edge, her massive frame outlined against the pale sky. Pawn and Rook, now nearly the size of small black bears, ambled nearby, their keen eyes scanning for straggling berries or unwary rodents. As Mia watched, Echo lifted her head and let out a deep, resonant chuff, a signal that carried across the quiet morning air. Villagers gathered at a safe distance, craning their necks with eager anticipation. Children, part of Mia's newly launched Bear Ambassadors program, approached calmly, scattering apple cores and dried venison chunks in a wide arc. Echo sniffed each offering, then accepted them with a gentle nudge, allowing hands to rest upon her thick fur before she resumed her watch. Word of Echo's protective vigilance had spread quickly. She had disrupted poachers' snares, scolded foxes preying on poultry, and even nudged stray goats back toward barnyards. These stories, once met with fear, now inspired admiration. Mia descended to join the growing crowd, greeting each child by name as they recounted their encounters, how Echo's presence kept the livestock safe, how her deep chuffing calls warned them of oncoming snowfall. Adults shared data from the wildlife corridor cameras showing Echo and her cubs using the passage nightly, a living testament to coexistence in motion. In the village's timber-framed hall later that day, community leaders convened a meeting on human-bear harmony. A large map displayed Echo's GPS tracks crisscrossing protected corridors and fruiting meadows. Mia explained how the collar's data helped adjust corridor widths and reduce conflict points. Local foresters described plans to plant native berry bushes at corridor edges, ensuring bears could forage without venturing into croplands. Rangers unveiled motion sensor cameras that would replace lethal traps, and teachers distributed illustrated guides on reading bear body language, a skill learned, in part, through Echo's calm interactions with Mia. As twilight settled over the valley, Mia returned to the knoll with her camera to capture Echo's silhouette against a sky streaked in lavender and rose. The cubs tumbled in the fading light, while Echo, ever watchful, paused to sniff the breeze. Mia raised her lens and held it steady, knowing this image would grace the cover of her upcoming conservation report, Echoes of Trust, Bridging Two Worlds. Below the photograph, she would write of how compassion and patience had transformed a mother bear once trapped in steel jaws into a guardian whose very presence safeguarded both wildlife and people. In that quiet moment, the wind carrying the scent of pine and ripened huckleberries, Mia understood that Echo's true legacy would be the ripples of change radiating across Glacier Pass. Each berry offered, each gentle chuff, each safe crossing of the corridor spoke of a world remade by understanding. And high above, where the stars would soon appear, Echo and her cubs vanished into the dusk, sentinels of a new era, where the echoes of one rescue would forever bridge the wild and the human realms.